and welcome back to Migration, Season 2, Episode 12. Today we are talking about magic. And we're not just talking about the literal stage magic of the David Copperfields and the Houdinis of the world. No, we're talking about also the sense of awe we feel when we experience something that seems to break all the rules of what we thought was possible. A good magician can do just that. He can induce an immense feeling of total wonderment. I've had plenty of those experiences in my life, not just from magicians, but also from incredible first-hand experiences like lucid dreaming and seeing UFOs and realizing astral projection is actually real. Even a good conversation with friends about the paranormal and the larger possibilities out there can imbue us with a sense of magic. I know that even when I just speak about these experiences online, people have told me that they're filled with this sort of energy as they wonder at all the possibilities that I'm suggesting. And sometimes when they hear that I'm an atheist, it's like their heart sinks. It's like they feel like I've somehow taken the magic out of what I'm referring to. Oh, you think there's just a cold mechanic behind all of this. You feel there's a sort of science behind all these phenomena. Oh, well, that's no fun. Suddenly they feel I'm pointing to a stale and, most importantly, a limited world that's essentially run by the uncaring, impersonal laws of, physics. So if you can relate to that feeling even just a little bit, stay tuned, because we're going to really examine that need for magic and wonder we humans crave, as well as our natural craving for answers. After all, what's the first thing you say after you've watched a magician do something that appeared absolutely impossible? How did she do that? We want to know. We thirst for knowledge, and yet we also crave a sense of magic. So are we insane? What's with all these dichotomies with the human race? Is living a life where there are both rational answers and a deep, real sense of magic even possible? We're going to explore that today and much, much more, so get ready, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and stay tuned for today's episode of Migration. When I was a little kid, we had this amazing costume and magic trick shop in my downtown area, and it was called Wayne's Trick Shop. I don't know if it's still there. And I got high just from walking into this place. It was dimly lit with rows and rows of glass cases stuffed with shelves of every kind of magic trick imaginable. Trick quarters that you could punch your finger through, and special keys and spoons made of a certain kind of metal that would bend when you rubbed them in your hand and got the material warm, and decks of cards with hidden slots to make a card disappear, contraptions that can make fireballs shoot out of your hand. I adored this place, and I learned how to do all kinds of different magic tricks over the years. In elementary school, I got so good at it that the school started asking me to go around to the first and the second graders and kind of put on a show for them. And it was a blast watching the look of total confusion and awe on their faces. Well, all the while, the trick, of course, made perfect sense to me in my own mind. I know how it worked. There was no mystery at all on my end, and that stuck with me because it taught me something. It taught me that when I feel like that, when I'm staring at something that I totally cannot explain, I can approach that situation as if there must be, if nothing else, some other dynamic taking place here that I'm not aware of. It looks like reality just shattered, but clearly I'm not seeing the whole picture. And what's interesting is that so many famous atheists are also magicians. Penn Jillette, Matt Dillahunty, James Randi, and oddly enough, the most magical boy in the world, Daniel Radcliffe. He as well is an atheist.
impossible.
So imagine being that cop in the movie The Matrix, assuming you're familiar with that movie, that is. Did Trinity perform the impossible here? You know, that cop is convinced, even though the answers behind what that officer just saw are radical and world-altering. Within the context of The Matrix, there's actually a fairly reasonable explanation for how she performed those stunts. An explanation that does indeed have a repeatable logic to it. And people often ask me, how can I manage to still be an atheist after all my firsthand experiences with out-of-body phenomena, consciously moving through time and space, and spontaneous healing, and on and on. And I think of that cop. After that incident, maybe he just turned his life over to religion or a new age philosophy, but that would be a huge mistake, loaded with assumptions to assume that supernatural powers are real simply because your brain can't figure out the larger dynamics at work there. He can't understand that Trinity there simply understands the science at work behind the illusory world he's caught up in, chained by the neck to the wall like Plato's cave. And I say our current real-life situation is in many ways no different. From my standpoint, it seems that one of the worst things that you could do when you are faced with the impossible is to just throw your hands up and say, well, I guess the supernatural exists then. There's no other explanation that I can think of, so now I believe in magic. And then safely tuck that issue away in a corner of your mind and be done with it. Imagine where we'd be if that's how we operated. Well, I can't see the microscopic source of the Black Plague, so I'm just going to call it the devil. Forces beyond my understanding, and I'll continue to approach them with a superstitious mindset. What if no one ever looked further than a religious or a spiritual or supernatural explanation? And I would hope that my audience is smart enough to make all of the connections that I'm making here to, our real world situations, the problems that truly are plaguing us today, to the point where some are suggesting we're migrating backwards into a repeat of the Dark Ages. But must we feel that the answers that we are finding through science and logic and deduction somehow take away the magic behind the world we live in? I say not at all. We have to understand what science can and cannot do. In my experience, science never extinguishes the deepest sense of mystery we feel when we look at the world. It's exactly the opposite. The more you learn, the deeper your sense of awe at the world grows, and anyone who thinks otherwise has a terribly limited view of what science really is. Science simply offers a description of a process or the mechanics behind a phenomenon, but it doesn't explain the foundation of its existence. Science might put a label on all the moving parts and describe how they interact with one another, but it certainly doesn't encapsulate the entirety of what the thing is. To put it another way, we should absolutely continue to gaze in total awe at the beautiful, highly intelligent, amazing winged creature we're seeing, flying around through the trees, flying through the air, while at the same time know that this is a blue jay of the corvid family of birds, which measures 22 to 30 centimeters from bill to tail and weighs 70 to 100 grams with a wingspan of 34 to 43 centimeters and has a pronounced crest on the head and a crown of feathers and blah, blah, blah. There is knowing information about something, and there is the experience of witnessing and interacting with that something in the moment. In my own life, I have been equally deeply moved by both the words of Sri Ramana Maharshi when he speaks of our ultimate identity as consciousness, as well as when theoretical physicist Brian Greene describes the flow of time as it exists beyond our human perception in his book, The Fabric of the Cosmos. I've shed tears at the truths illuminated in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, as well as Carl Sagan's The Demon-Haunted World. If you think the answers that science can provide somehow diminishes your sense of magic of the universe, I want you to consider that you're looking for magic in the wrong place. And by that I mean that many people equate learning how to use some kind of magical or spiritual or religious power with finding, a real sense of beauty and power, or maybe even a purpose in this world. Everyone's guilty of this too on some level. Many churches and spiritualists promise their followers that their practice or beliefs will manifest monetary riches, or that crystals can cast real spells, and certain martial arts claim that, they'll give you superhuman strength through the direction of your chi. And, to be clear, I'm not saying there isn't absolutely something to some of those practices. Heck, I've offered you several specific instructions on how to tap into out-of-body experiences and radical healing and the like. But I'm telling you that's not the magic you're really after. I would argue that you'd be bored with the kind of magic you think you want in that case. And I can prove it. Let's start with a real piece of magic that we have access to right this very moment. When we look at the larger timeline of humans existing on this planet, you have to realize that if we could take the very device that you're watching this video on right now, along with the wonders of the internet and all the access to instant communication and information and light and sound and entertainment and movies with computer effects, and you brought that device just the smallest hair backwards in time, people would not be able to distinguish that tool that you can hold in the palm of your hand from pure magic. You'd be wielding the power of a god at the touch of a finger. 99% of the rest of the human timeline behind us would look at us as gods. And furthermore, it's even likely that anyone living just even a little bit in the past would assume that you must hail from the most magical oasis, a true wonderland, some society of enlightened humans who have access to these kinds of powers. They might assume we essentially live at some version of Hogwarts, where there's just magic everywhere and every day is one astounding adventure after another. And that's it. That's where you really have to make that choice of where it is that you really want to find this magic that you are craving in your life. Because on the one hand, what I just said is true. We do live in a world of pure wonder. The things that we have learned about our world are breathtaking. The power we have access to right now is incredible, and every day you do have the opportunity to see how amazing this world is. The world that, even with all our science and technology and quantum physics, we still don't really understand how reality is unfolding moment to moment, and we certainly don't understand what this consciousness is that appears to be observing all of it, and why we keep finding over and over in repeatable experiments that this very act of observing the world appears to have real, measurable effects on it. And all the time I'm reading about how we are using these principles of quantum entanglement, for example. It's a principle of this universe where two apparently individual particles of matter and energy can communicate instantaneously with each other, where two things act as if they are one and the same thing, no matter how far we separate them from one another. Something that logically, rationally appears to be impossible, but because we've studied it and learned how to make use of it, we've put it to work for us, and it reliably helps make our current technology work, and no one has yet to really explain it. If that's not enough magic for you that exists in your day-to-day world, I'm telling you that no amount of money or prana or essential oils or crystals or incense or kundalini or karma or even astral projection is ever going to satisfy you. You'll eventually look at it with indifference, just like you do to that little sliver of magic you keep in your back pocket. So yeah, you either see magic as being in the moment all around you. You're either amazed by just the quality of consciousness and perception that is happening moment by moment, or you don't, and you're looking for it somewhere else. You're waiting for some other amazing thing to happen, which unfortunately will be temporary and fleeting, but not the present moment. The present moment is a magic trick that is happening constantly and forever. So you either see magic as existing here in the present moment, interacting with you right now, or it's ultimately unimportant, a temporary phenomenon that's going to come and go. So stop looking for magic somewhere else. It's already here. To experience that truth takes a change of attitude, first and foremost. So thank you so much for watching. Please, again, if you're enjoying this channel, like and subscribe. Go buy some books. Go buy some art. All of my links are below. Yes, I'm an artist. I do originals and I offer prints on all kinds of cool t-shirts and mugs and all kinds of neat stuff like that. So if you want to support this channel, go do that. And again, if you've got questions, you've got comments, reach out to me. I've had so many people reaching out with some really great comments and some really interesting questions. So please feel free to do that. So until next time, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye. In my own life, I've been equally moved both by the words of Sri Ramana Maharshi when he speaks of our ultimate identity as consciousness, as well as when theoretical physicist Brian Greene describes the flow of time as it exists beyond our human perception. The word is perception. I suppose you didn't know that. The word is perception. I would like to enter that word into the dictionary, please. The word is perception. What's wrong with me? So I swear to you that... Oh, shit.